This one, the High Priestess, first off the gate, really not surprised by her. Um, Pisces is a feminine sign connected to water and the moon, obviously. And this is really as moony as it gets if we're not looking at the moon card itself. The High Priestess is very early on in the major arcana, but she is thought of as like one of the most important substantial figures in the tarot deck. The High Priestess really speaks to grasping and understanding things that are beyond this realm, and she is able to interpret them, communicate them, but really it's knowing it yourself. The High Priestess may be able to um, bestow those messages on others and be the vessel, like a lot of tarot readers draw this card. And it's a less of a public position like the Hierophant might be in a spiritual, praise position that people go to because he puts himself in that seat. The High Priestess is more so having that internal ability of finding answers. And it's not necessarily something that is for everyone to see. Maybe it's a more personal, just for yourself. If it's tarot is just a tool that you only use for yourself, that you don't like to use for other people necessarily, or if you are a teacher or a guide of some kind and you do like to open that door so you have somebody to accept the insights that you're finding, or to help them find their own. And so the High Priestess really takes all of that into account here and kind of gives us that, Libra justice vibe. And so she's almost like spiritual justice, like a very high karmic card that comes in and really does what needs to be done. It's a very, very powerful card to get. In Pisces season, maybe that's why we have the reversal. I'd honestly expect to see a lot of reversals in this season, because Pisces is really coming after Aquarius, where we're going very far out, and Pisces is almost grabbing us back, but it's unable to almost filter the parts that we've gone and explored. So it's like when we get to Pisces, we have some of the unknown come back with us, and that can translate into, having spirits visit you, all this Capricorn energy for sure. Lots of deceased relatives, ancestors are coming up for a lot of people, myself included. It's been the first opportunity I've really taken to connect with them. And so, Pisces is very muddled. It's not very clear, and maybe that's why we have this reversal of the High Priestess, because there's a lot down in the depths of the ocean. I feel like the two things that come to mind when I think of Pisces they're always ocean related. It's either an island stranded, out on its own, unable to contact the rest of the world, feeling very isolated, and feeling like you almost don't have the tools to survive, very sensitive, very, like almost like a lost dog. Dogs become very dependent on humans because they've been domesticated. They tend to be given food as opposed to going out and finding it themselves. They aren't self-reliant. They're not resourceful. And so with Pisces, we see a lot of that because they're so far stretched. Some of the Pisces I've met along the way are the most flexible people, like physically and, spiritually. They can really, really go very far. And so that leaves a lot less room for them in the physical because they aren't present that much physically. And so there's a lot of distortion, and there's a lot that gets misdirected. There's a lot of stuff that is unintentional that happens, and I think it would behoove all of us to give Pisces a little bit more room to kind of make mistakes in that aspect, because a lot of times they really don't know how to communicate what it is that they're feeling on such a deep level. Again, High Priestess in reverse. That's what we really see here. And we see the religious implication in this too. Obviously, Pisces is tied to religion and anything spiritual in the nature. Yeah, and so, the blue speaks to sadness. Honestly, we could just focus on this card. There's so much symbolism in here. I think a lot of people would say right off the bat that the moon is associated primarily with Cancer, and while that seems true, there are so many celestial bodies out there that are dual purposed, or they really impact more than one sign. I mean, the planets themselves, you've got Venus representing Taurus and Libra. Mainly Libra is the primary significant of that, or the ruler, as well as Mercury is ruled by Gemini, but also Virgo. You've got Jupiter, which, even though Pisces has its own planet in Neptune, it also shares the fortune aspects of Jupiter. I feel like a lot more often than not, they have, with that water blending in there, some of the misfortunes, because water are the areas in our charts where we're really stripped raw to the bone. It's usually more harder energy to work with, because it's very, very not practical in nature. And so, for most of us on this earth realm, we are in an earth world here. We are earthly beings. The water is the hardest element. I feel like most of us have a hard time navigating that. And so that's why, more often than not, when it comes to religion and things like that, we have to turn to an institution, or an actual place of worship, and it takes a whole group to gather to really understand it and to feel it, unless you're the kind that really find yourself a guru of a sort. Like, a lot of the mutable signs, I feel like, have the most inclinations to become like those yogis, the gurus. Sagittarius, Pisces, Gemini, if you're able to master, the thought, and Virgo, obviously, a lot of yoga with the implication of exercising. And so, not only do we see the element of water present in the sign of Pisces, but the mutable modality makes them very quick to change. I don't know how this works, because the ocean is a very kind of unknown place, especially deep in it. But I don't feel like most fish really stay in the same territory for too long. You can't expect that. I feel like it's constantly, it's an area that's constantly being changed, but also there are so many things that are coming into it to disrupt it. And I think, that's what we can see with Pisces, is that it's kind of moving along, it's drifting along in its own intimate, private world, and all of these things that are happening around it impose chaos and impose disruptions. And so, whether it's, a cruise liner sailing through your part of the ocean and disrupting the top, and, maybe trash falls into your area from, blatant passengers being careless and or drunk, or or maybe it's migration time, but not for you, and there are different varieties of fish swimming through, your kind of territory, or the place that you frequent the most. And so it's very, you feel like you're kind of out of control almost of what happens in the ocean, and it can make one almost build up defenses out of necessity, more so than the other signs. And I think we see that a lot with Pisces. I've been blessed to know a few very intimately in my own life, and still do. And you either get, I feel like, the very, very sensitive, quicker to emotion, vulnerable Pisces, or you get a very hardened, very desensitized, Pisces that is like put on this armor, because over time they are so tired of feeling out of control, or that they don't know how to filter, or whatever it is. And so that's the union, and maybe the high priestess kind of floats in between. The sign of Pisces represents moving through it, the yin and the yang, the two fish. It almost looks like the yin and the yang, like if it's just constantly moving, and so it's balancing itself out somehow, but it's almost through extremities. And we see that with the water signs, and the mutable signs ramping that up, making it move a lot faster even. And so this is a season where we can see a lot of choppy waters, but more often than not, we can feel very just tired, withered from the experience of moving through the entire zodiac cycle. This is a very last sign before springtime, and we have that Aries rebirth, and we kind of get to start over in a way. Pisces is our last hurrah to some degree. It's almost like finding land again. It's like if you're stranded out in the ocean on an island, and springtime is like, maybe plants start coming out of the surface, and you're able to use the wood or the resources coming out of the earth as a ways to get back to where you need to be in time for Aries season, which is completely action oriented. It's taking control, maybe being a little bossy, but it's really moving back into control of your life. And so it's that rebirthing process. And it's almost like, if we're thinking about films, how Jack Sparrow, one of the Pirates movies, he ends up in like limbo. I'm pretty sure. It's been a while since I've seen it, but he ends up in limbo. I remember the crab scene where he, like, all those crabs come, and it almost seems like drug induced, like, but eventually he finds his way back to reality, and back to his mission, or what he set out to do. And that's very much what this season can be like. So don't get scared. Please don't take yourself down the deep end. Yes, those feelings are going to come out. Express them, feel them, see where they're coming from. I bet it's a hidden side of yourself that you really you have a tendency to conceal. And naturally, with Pisces season and the moon card, we see secrets revealed. And so if you feel like that stuff is bubbling to the surface, don't repress it. This is your chance. Maybe at least acknowledge it, and then Aries season, just blurt it out. It's going to want to. That's the one, I feel like, saving grace about Aries, is that they're so honest, that they almost get forgiveness pretty immediately. And that's why so many people flock to them, even though they're so brash and so aggressive, is because it's almost that child sentimentality where you're just like, they're just a kid, it's just pure energy, and there's no filter. And so Pisces is really our chance to identify where we're hurting, where the pain, where we go to that island and that depth, and what we take with us. What keeps taking us there? It's like a ball and chain. Is it a person? Is it something that happened in your past? Is it family ties? Is it, your career? Is your work not fulfilling? What is it? And it may not just be one thing. I mean, oftentimes there's more than one. And so that's really the gift of this season, is getting in touch with stuff that is so beyond ourselves, but we have the capacity to really have a lot of enlightenment. When we talk about spiritual enlightenment, it gets tied again to Pisces. Pisces is a sign of spirituality. And so this is our time to become enlightened within ourselves, and so we're better able to greet the new day and the new astrological year come the end of March with Aries season. So That's really, I guess, the card that kind of sums it all up for me. There's a duality to it. We see the two fishes, the moon, the blue, the femininity, the high priestess. You catch my drift. The ties to religion. I mean, yeah, wow, what a powerful card. And it's even upside down. This is all we needed, guys.